Three, two, one. Hello, and welcome to the Brandon and Daryl experience, or BDE for short. I'm Daryl.
And I'm Brandon.
And today we're talking about the one, the only, Dune.
Dun dun dun.
So yes, you may be thinking, oh wow, this episode's a little delayed, but honestly it's perfectly fine because we really wanted to take some time to really get our thoughts together on this event, basically.
Really marinate in our thoughts.
Exactly. And so yeah, so to start, Brandon, do you want to give like just a short like little synopsis thing, and then we can get into our thoughts? We're gonna start with no spoilers, and then we'll let you know when we start to get into spoilers later. But Brandon, you can take it away.
All right. Let's put it this way: there's a giant sand planet. This giant sand planet has some spice, as in literally spice. That's what it's called. That people use for both hallucinogenic drugs, but also interstellar space travel, because that makes sense. And so now there's basically a war being brought upon certain different houses or groups of people who want this spice and want to be the best in the galaxy. That's pretty much it. That's it. That overall synopsis of the movie. You don't need to go anymore. It's all good.
So you can probably get an idea of Brandon's thoughts here. But yeah, I guess I'll just say, Brandon, what were your thoughts on the film?
All right. As these past few days have been quite trying for me, Daryl. I've tried so hard to find the words, the passion, and the dexterity around how I can even find a way to like this movie in terms of a subjective matter. Objectively, I know I'm in the wrong. I'm in the minority. I know this. I listened to reviews. I've seen the Rotten Tomato scores. I'm in the minority. I'm just not that big of a fan of this movie. On a technical standpoint, great. It's well shot, good lighting, great soundtrack from Hans Zimmer. There's sometimes it gets a little overdone and repetitive. He has his wah wah, his 2010 era's wah wah, like that over thing. Like he brings that in a little bit, but still good score. It's good from Hans Zimmer. But other than that, I've struggled to find ways to like this movie. And there's times where I like start reflecting back on the movie, and I'm just like, yeah, that's good, right? And then I think about it more. I'm just like, no, I don't. And I don't know what it like. Actually, no, I know a lot about what I don't like about this movie. And I'll just run through it very briefly, so Daryl, you can get to your thoughts. But for me, it felt as empty as the desert planet that it was being shot on, in terms of plot and story, and how it kind of brought everything to, and how it didn't bring everything together. That's how it felt empty to me. And the actors, they didn't. I mean, the acting was. It was yeah, you could say it was something. It wasn't. I won't say it's bad. It definitely wasn't bad acting, but Timothy Chalamet, kind of a brick wall for me. Maybe that's what he's going for. Maybe that's what Denis wanted. I didn't really find it all that engaging. I would have to see, as weird as it is, but Jason Momoa was the star for me. And Oscar Isaac, he was like a close second. But other than that, yeah, nothing really stellar in that department either. And there's just a lot of things lacking for me to say that this was epic and like the movie of the year for me, as opposed to you, Daryl. I'll leave it at that before we get any further.
You do not know how much it hurts my heart to hear you say that. So, okay. So if you couldn't tell by that sentiment, I loved this movie. I thought that it was not just a technical achievement on almost every level. I actually found it extremely compelling. I can definitely agree that like there are times in which the film can be kind of slow, but I thought that the story was interesting enough that I really wanted to know where it was going. And I think from beginning to end, and we forgot to mention that this is Dune Part 1, so this isn't really the complete story, but I found myself engaged in what was going on, and I thought the pure spectacle of it was out of this world, literally. We had gotten a chance to see it in IMAX. We actually saw it together with a few other friends, and I think that the experience really helped the film in a lot of ways. I think specifically the sound design is impeccable. It's some of the best sound design I think I've heard in a movie, and I don't even know how long. I thought that the performances across the board I thought were really good, if not great. I think that what Timothée is doing in this film, I think it can definitely be off-putting, but it's very broody, it's very internal, and I did find it interesting, especially when you start looking at scenes like the Gom Jabbar scene, which you see in the trailer, the box of pain, and his performance in that scene, as well as other scenes throughout the film, is really interesting. And I really wanted to, I guess, know more about not just him, but other characters. If I had to say my favorite performance of anybody in this film, it would probably be Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica. I think that her and Jason Momoa, to a certain extent, are not so much playing like broody internal characters, but are more expressive. And that really helped me to connect with their characters overall. But I will say Rebecca Ferguson, for me, stole the show in a lot of different scenes. I think that Denis Villeneuve is one of my favorite directors working today. I think he's one of the best filmmakers working today. And I think, once again, I think he hit it out of the park. Is it my favorite film of his? No. But I do definitely think that this is a film that is, one, worth seeing, and two, just amazing from beginning to end. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, so I think that we have two very, very different viewpoints on this film, and I guess it's hard to delve into in like a non-spoiler section, but just so we can kind of, I guess, not get too much into plot details, I just find it very interesting how, because I can understand being emotionally disconnected from this film, but I'm not gonna lie to you, Brandon, I don't really fully get how you watched it and got nothing from it.
It's just, so I'll be honest, I didn't fall asleep, but I was in and out of a state of unconsciousness.
Oh my god.
For at least the first 20 minutes. Now, whether or not that has something to say about the movie, or maybe like it was at 9:30 at night. I'm an old man apparently, and I can't stay up anymore. But after the first 20 minutes, I was fully invested in, I shouldn't say that. I was not fully invested in the movie because pacing was very slow for me, at least. And like, our one friend was saying that, oh, you should watch other movies of Denis, like Blade Runner 2048, to get like a
2049,
whatever, to get a feel for slow paced movie. I'm just, sir, I've watched slow paced movies before. That's not the problem. This movie is a 2.5 hour runtime. It feels like it's a 4-hour movie. And there's nothing to latch onto for me. Like the character, there's just nothing in terms of like character development. I would say there really isn't any. Like for Timothée Chalamet's character Paul, he's just kind of there for me. He goes and like he just kind of naturally progresses just because the story pushes him that way, but not in the sense of like he has to grow kind of thing. It's more like, oh, this is just kind of the next logical step for his character to go. And like it just feels like that for most of the movie and for most of the characters, if they even have that moment. I'd say even for me, most of the characters don't even have a moment to really shine or to really grow. Like they have certain scenes that we'll get into in the spoiler section that they attempt to give these characters like a highlighted moment and to be like, this is what this character represents, this is what they stand for, this is their basically the epitome of what their characterization is. And I see what they're doing. It just I never felt it. There's nothing that in this movie particularly that I could say that I felt, and I felt for these characters, and that I felt like for the world that they're in. And like that's not to discredit the world building either. Like the source material has a lot to build off of, and I understand that. I know Dune is a thick book, and it has a lot like that the author had in there that obviously Denis can't cover in a 2.5 hour movie. I understand that, and I haven't read the book though either. But I understand from people who have read the book, it'd be like, oh, like, there's a lot of source material to like draw from. But it just felt like almost like a blank world. It just felt, yeah, like it was the spectacle in the sense of it all. For me, it just felt like you blew your money on the visuals, but then you didn't really hone in on the story and the progression and how you should feel for these characters. There was never a why. I think that's it for me, Daryl, is that there was never a why. Like, why is this happening? Why is that happening? Why is the character doing this? Why should I be driven to be compelled to feel this way? So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, and why. And there's more that I can keep going, but I'd rather not. I'd rather hear your opinion as to how it made you feel, as to how you got to that conclusion that this is, as you, in your own words, at a earlier point in time when we were talking about Dune, because we've been talking about this for the past 4 days since it's been out. Why you declared it a quote unquote masterpiece, which I highly disagree.
So I think that, like, I will agree with you that there is a certain amount of, like I said, there isn't really an emotional arc to grab onto in this film. Again, a lot of that for me comes down to the fact that this is part one. But I think that what I really appreciate about it is that this didn't feel to me like a film made by a studio committee, a la Marvel movies, a la DC movies, a la basically any other big budget film that comes out starring the next big star. This movie felt like a film made by a filmmaker. It felt to me like something that was singular in its vision. And I think that we don't get that at all. The only person who works in Hollywood today who can get a $200 million budget and basically be able to get that budget with no questions asked is Christopher Nolan. And I think that in this particular instance, Denis is showing that he is just as good, if not better, than Christopher Nolan, I would argue. I think that this film, what really grabbed me was the fact that I felt transported into this world. And so the questions of why is this happening, why is that happening, I didn't have those questions because, for one, I felt like the story explained enough for me to not wonder why certain things are happening the way they're happening. But two, I felt like I was being brought on a journey in another place. Like, I didn't just feel like I was watching a movie. I felt like I was just in there with them. The scale and the scope of the film is just so, well, for lack of a better term, epic. But it still managed to feel introspective, and it still managed to feel very like, it's essentially, what if you give a $200 million budget to an art house filmmaker? And I think that it comes together so well in a film that could have easily just been, well, one, nearly unwatchable, but two, just this like balls to the wall, like action epic. Instead, it takes its time to really develop what's going on in the story, and the world building I think is very strong. And granted, again, the movie is slow, and I definitely agree that when you really think about what happens in this film, not that much happened, and the movie's 2.5 hours. But I do feel as though the stuff that did happen was so compelling that I was willing to extend that level of just, I was able to basically just let myself go and be like, okay, Denis, I trust you. Just take me on this journey and show me what it is that you want to show me. Like, just let it happen. And I think that he did something really, really fascinating here. And I found myself really engaged. And to the point in which, I never say this about really movies ever, to the point in which I would have been so down for this movie to be 3, maybe 3.5 hours. I wanted more. And that's what makes me so excited for part 2 as well, is that, like, I just wanted more of what he was giving. And yeah, that's kind of where I was with the film. And that's why, like, by the end of it, the fact that I was so pumped for more Dune left me thinking this was a fantastic film. And I'm not usually one for franchises. I'm not usually one for big epic franchises specifically. I'm just going to be upfront. I'm not a fan of Lord of the Rings. I'm not a fan of Star Wars. I'm not well, Marvel, it's like hit or miss. And the only franchise I ever liked was Harry Potter, but Fantastic Beasts, do not get me started. Those movies are trash. So like, I have a hard time getting invested in certain franchises, but this to me felt like something that I am 100% in for. And that's something that almost never happens for me.
And so that's where I think we can agree on one part, is that I think a party wanted it to be longer, but also shorter. So in the sense that I'm saying is that there's a lot of things not happening that could have been cut from the movie. And we, again, I'm going to go hard into that in the spoiler part of the second of this. But there's a lot of portions where I feel like the movie could have been cut down and then more content be added, because there's definitely room for that. In that sense of scope that you were talking about, Daryl, like I just never, like, I saw it. Like, yes, I see the scope, I see what it is and what it's trying to be, because it is what it accomplishes to be. It is a massive scope, it's a massive scale movie, but that's it. It just feels like you're in a big pond, or you're in the ocean and you're just one droplet in the water. Like, it just feels kind of empty at the end of it. Like, that's what it felt like to me, at least. Like, and I'm just going along on the wave. I'm on it for the ride. That's pretty much it. And I wanted to be out of the movie. Like, I wanted it to be over. I did not feel like that it should keep going, especially the way that it was going. Yeah, there's just a lot that is just missing for me.
Yeah, I just disagree. And like we'll go more into detail in the spoiler section. Which honestly we might get to, because like I don't really know what much else I can really say. Like I just was so moved by what I was seeing. So yeah.
Yeah. So I guess with that being said, we're just going to go straight into spoilers. And,
yeah, I mean, just to and real quick, like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was just gonna say, like, why don't we just like give like a quick score, just for anyone who decides like they want to pause and then continue later or something if they haven't seen the movie yet.
In case they're like, we'll see who scores more accurate.
Exactly. So what would you give this? Let's say out of 10. That usually is easier than a 5 scale.
Reactionary, I want to give it like a 4, because that's how uninterested I was in the movie, and that's how I honestly feel about the movie. I don't like it.
Oh my god.
In terms of like objectivity, it's I can't rate on objectivity because I'm too biased on my
yeah,
feelings.
just make it. It's you.
You know what? We'll give it a 5. It passes for just attempting to be a movie. It gets a 5.
I'm dead. Okay. All right. 5 out of 10. Oh, that hurts. Okay. All right. Yeah. No. I would give it an 8. I think that like I said, it's definitely long. It does have a slower pace, but I was into it.
All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this podcast, where we're gonna say everything we don't like about this movie. Well, what I don't like.
Oh my god. Okay. All right. Here we go. All right.
Where to begin?
Okay. So,
wait. I have something.
I have something. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I forgot I wanted to say this, but now that we're in this portion, using Jessica was the strongest actor, the strongest character in this movie.
100%.
Hell no! 100%. She just kept sobbing the whole time, and she didn't do anything. She was just there. Rebecca Ferguson, do better.
God, why are you going for Rebecca Ferguson?
It's actually probably not her fault. It's actually Denis, do better.
Okay. I thought that Lady Jessica, Rebecca Ferguson's character, was one of the best characters, because I found that, again, she is the only actor, and you could argue Jason Momoa is also doing this, but I mean, that's a little different. I mean, I don't really think Jason Momoa is the best actor dramatically, but that's a whole other discussion that we can probably get into later. Rebecca Ferguson, what I liked about her performance is that everyone's basically playing it very internal, very subdued. Timothée Chalamet's character is very, Paul Atreides, is very introspective and very like brooding and angsty. And I liked that Rebecca Ferguson was like a nice juxtaposition between him and Leto, played by Oscar Isaac. where she played it more external. So like you're saying, like a lot of times she'll be crying and sobbing. One, you're not talking about why she's crying and sobbing. That's all that I think is pretty important.
Bitch.
But two, I found that she really acted as like kind of an emotional pull, in the sense that like seeing the emotion on her, and also seeing like the way in which she tries to work through her emotion, considering like what she is a part of. So long story short, she's basically like a space witch. She is someone who is a part of a coven of witches named like the something of the Bene Gesserit.
And she's a Jedi.
No.
she uses Jedi mind tricks. No. Basically what Ben Kenobi does in the first New Hope, when he goes like, these are not the droids you're looking for. Basically, that's her power. She basically, her and Paul can do basically like a speaking thing where they're just like, no! And then people are like, okay, we'll listen to you.
Yes, and essentially her role is that she is the concubine of Leto, which is important because in the film there's a point in which he says, I should have just married you, and all of us were like, wait, what? That was something we just didn't pick up on. They did mention it, but just something that just kind of slipped by. But regardless, so basically Lady Jessica, her whole thing is that she is essentially teaching Paul. Paul's kind of caught between two worlds. He is both trying to learn how to be the successor to Duke Leto, who is the head of House Atreides, but he's also someone who has inherited the power of the Bene Gesserit from Lady Jessica. And the thing about it is that Lady Jessica, apparently she was only supposed to bear girls, like she was only supposed to have female children, and that just didn't happen, and it was all part of a prophecy. And so with her character, what I find really interesting is that she already feels isolated, in the sense that she is essentially looked down upon by the head of the Bene Gesserits, correct? But then also what I really liked about her is that she is really trying to balance her allegiances between the two worlds. Because essentially one thing that they kind of allude to is the fact that her allegiances to her family and her allegiances to the Bene Gesserit are two separate allegiances, and essentially one does not overlap with the other, or rather the Bene Gesserit comes above all else. And even though she doesn't want it to be the case, she kind of has to, it has to be the case. And so I think that best comes across in the scene where, well, one, the start of the Gom-Jabbar scene, which is one of my favorite scenes in the film, but two, when her and Oscar Isaac are discussing so Oscar Isaac, there was an assassination attempt that was done against Paul at some point. And Oscar Isaac is feeling like doubts about everything that's going on the planet Arrakis. Lady Jessica and Leto are having this discussion. And at one point, he turns to her and says, will you protect our son? Or will you protect Paul? And she says, with my life. But then he says, I'm not talking to you as his mother. I'm talking to you as a Bene Gesserit. And that to me showed like, okay, so she has these complicated allegiances. And so her character is really interesting because, in a sense, how is she supposed to balance the two without completely fucking up one or the other? And I found that really, really compelling. I think it's really interesting watching the way in which she is dealing with Paul's, I guess, character arc, because for example, the last scene of the movie when she is like, we need to get off world to Caladan, like we need to get out of here, and then Paul turns to her and is like, no, I want to stay here on Arrakis. I'm going to be here with the Freeman. Like, we're not going anywhere. My path is on Arrakis. I'm not going anywhere. And that to me was, one, a big piece of his character development, but two, was a moment in which she is now becoming less able to control what Paul does. And now essentially she has to kind of deal with the idea of like, well, now her son's kind of growing up. And I found her character really interesting in those little dynamics. Also, I think that, again, her character is easily the most emotional, so I kind of latched onto that as well. So yeah, that was kind of the reason why I would say she's the best character for me.
Oh boy.
You have a lot. I feel like there's a lot to unpack.
As you were saying all this, it just put me in a spiral of things I need to just get off my head. And I'm going to go down a list.
Oh, I'm ready.
And I just need to go point by point, and I'm not gonna
Okay.
we can have you can pick and choose from a conversation after I'm done the list.
Okay.
This is basically most of the things I have problem with this movie, besides the acting choices. So first of all, you know how I brought in there's this movie never answers questions, or it never really expands upon the world that we're in, or it feels pretty empty, because it never gives why. It never poses a question or gives answers as to these whys that we have. A few of these whys. Why is Atreides such a threat to the Emperor? Never explained. Why should we care? Let me get down my list. Let me get down my list.
Okay. All right.
Why should we care about these characters? Never explained, to be perfectly honest. There's a few characters that this is another thing. Dune is not friendly to people who've never interacted with the Dune story. And Daryl, yes, I know you've never interacted with Dune before, but you had a little inkling. You had some, because a friend also gave you some background, a little bit of background, but not a lot.
That background was a lot. He gave me one piece of background, and it had nothing to do with the plot.
Okay, but anywho. Do you know the doctor, the diamond on the head? We never got an explanation as to why that was there. This is what I found out. Apparently it means that he's of the utmost respected doctor that can be appointed. Even it means the Emperor would trust him with his life. That's how morally, ethically held he is had. And that's such a big thing that we don't know in the freaking movie, because he basically helped with the coup on Atreides. We just think, oh, he's just a bad doctor. He would do anything for his wife. But no, it means so much more, because it means basically that this guy has the highest you know how big that is. That basically means if you or I were entrusted, if we were doctors, that we can perform open heart surgery, or even recommend an Advil to any of the world leaders in the world, whether that be US, Canada, China, whoever. That's how big it is. And we don't know that. And it's simple as a diamond on his head. And sure, we probably can't. I don't know how they would explain that. I understand. I don't know how they would explain it in a 2.5-hour movie. But still, you don't get that. And that's just one part.
So
I'm not done. There's still more on my list.
Oh, okay. All right. Go ahead.
Powers. They want power because apparently the doctor just touches people, and he just has a power just to know, oh yeah, you kind of goofed inside. Or there's the one other, I don't remember the actor's name, but basically he's the guy that rolls his head in the back of his head, or eyes in the back of his head.
General. The head of security, basically.
Yeah, and he just knows oh, they're approaching. It's what? And then so that's not even explained either. They just have, there's just certain people who have powers. There's too many visions in this movie. They could have had one or two visions in the freaking movie and left it at that. Freaking Zendaya is not in this movie. If you came here to watch Zendaya, she's not in this movie unless you're here for the last 15 minutes. And sure, that's not a big portion that. I don't care that he's not in the movie. But if you're gonna market the movie like that, Paul's a whiny little bitch, and he doesn't change. His character doesn't change. What else do I have? Yeah. Also, why does Paul want to go to the planet so badly when he has these visions? He's like, I want to go to the planet, and that's never explained. Why do you want to go so bad? Is it just for a girl? Is that it? There's a lot. I'm gonna leave it there. That's a few of my problems with the movie. Is that there's just a lot of whys and no answers, and there's a lot of things that are just there in the movie that present itself that you just wouldn't know unless you had a background in Dune. I'm done. For now.
Okay. All right. So there's a lot to unpack there. Because I feel like I have at least my take on those various things. From the movie specifically. I do know some of the context from the book, mainly because like after we saw the movie, like I long story short, I couldn't stop thinking about the movie, so I would listen to like podcasts and things like that. And some people had read the book and would basically get into like small little details here and there. But here's my thing. Okay, so I guess I'll start with what was your first point? It was about why
is Atreides a threat to the Emperor?
Okay, that's it. So the way I see it, this is kind of like a Game of Thrones setup. That was kind of the way that I kind of took all this for face value.
Oh, that's another problem. That you're banking on this last thing. They're banking on the second part of the movie. That should not be like, you don't go into a movie going experience just being like, oh, well, the second one's going to wrap everything up for us. Especially again, when you market it as no. When you market it as a standalone film, I shouldn't have to have the expectations that the movie gets better with the sequel. At least to me, like the movie by itself should be its own movie, in the fact that it can like stand alone and strong, and not have to heavily rely on the second part of the movie. Like you can do that with book, you can do that with the TV series, like Game of Thrones, like you're saying, because like episode 1, I wasn't that invested in Game of Thrones episode 1, but I knew it could get better if I kept watching, and that's expected because it's a TV series, not a fucking movie. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
Okay, so I want to unpack that as well, but we'll get there when we get there. So I took this as like a Game of Thrones setup, and granted, again, 2.5 hours. So I'm basically just essentially, I think that what Denis is doing is he's kind of putting it on the audience to kind of fill in the blanks. Why is House Atreides a threat to the Emperor? Okay, maybe House Atreides is extremely powerful. As far as like, because there are other details about it. There are other things about like how House Atreides is like this very like Leto is supposed to be like this very like enticing presence within the world of Dune, and he essentially is gaining favor over the king or over like the head of the Imperium in the world of Dune and whatever. But like I just took it as, okay, he's seen as a threat to the king because obviously his house in some way is the most powerful, and there are things that lead to that being the case, like things like the amount of, I guess, importance they place on like Duncan Idaho and Gurney Halleck and some of the other characters that are involved in the story. Even when you talk about like what the case with like the Doctor, okay, the Doctor has a diamond on his head because he is deemed to be so of such great regard that he could care for the king. Wouldn't that scream that Leto is very important if he can have a doctor like that on his team?
Yeah, but you don't know that. They never once said that.
But what I'm saying is that I was perfectly fine with the implication of that, because even the case with what's his name, the head of
implication.
But that's what I'm saying. I've read an implication. That's what I'm saying.
You did? I just saw a diamond on his head, and I just thought he's like, that's his religious belief. That could have been anything. It could have been anything.
Well, I just took it because every time they introduced a character, at some point they would talk about like how great this character is. They'd talk about, the great Duncan Idaho, the great Gurney Halleck, the great fucking the head of the security guy who like tried to resign, and then like Leto is like, no, you're like the best of whatever, blah 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 blah. I just took it.
I
as
thought it was just like that posh
almost
thing.
Everyone that he works. I just look at it like everyone he works with is in some way in high regard. And so that to me suggested that he held some sort of power that was threatening to the head of the Imperium.
I don't know. When you bring up those points, it just sounds like like of that world. Like you would refer to me like, the great Duncan Idaho, the great Gurney. Like it just sounds like language that doesn't necessarily implicate it. Like it just feels like what's it called? Like hyperbole. That's just what it felt like to me. I didn't take it as an implication as like, they're the best of the best. Like, of course you're going to say that about your own people. Like, that's your bodyguard. You would hope he's the best of the best, but like, obviously we've seen the movie, he's not, because he fucking dies and he lets everyone else die.
Well, see what I'm saying is that like I took that as the implication, being someone who's seen a lot of fantasy and things like that, and so like I personally was fine with kind of just filling in those blanks myself. I didn't really. I feel like as far as Dune is concerned, it's such a dense story that like a lot of those details, I'm perfectly fine with leaving those details out, if ultimately that detail wouldn't really do anything for the storytelling or the plot.
Fair.
And so like I was perfectly fine with filling in those blanks. I can like I get it, but like I just was fine with just like being like, okay, he is a threat to the king because whatever. His team seems like it's so great. Okay, he's a threat. Cool. Now the next point you made was about Timothy Chalamet, or one of your points was about how Paul Atreides, as played by Timothy Chalamet, because we keep on talking about Timothy, he doesn't change. I disagree.
At what point
I think his I think that his change is subtle, but I think that ultimately his change is there. And I think that, and this is also feeding into the visions as well, because that was another thing you brought up. So the whole reason why the stuff is happening the way it's happening is about Paul, and specifically about how Paul is having these visions that in a sense are calling him to his, I guess, ultimate end. And so as the story progresses, his character, when we first meet him, first off, and I mean this is a visual thing, but first off, when we first meet Paul, he is, because Timothée is like this, he's skinny as fuck. I don't know. I took it as like that was kind of a directorial choice. Like, okay, first thing we see of Paul, he's going to be shirtless, waking up in bed, and he is lanky and tiny and just like, okay, showing that like almost he lacks a certain amount of. I felt like there was more, I guess, purpose to it, like to show that he is, in a sense, a kid, or like rather he just doesn't hold a certain amount of power. He's not imposing, he's not threatening, he just is like, he's there. It's Paul. And so, and then immediately after that, we're introduced to Lady Jessica, and they're eating breakfast, and she has him use the voice, which we mentioned it before. Basically, in this film, the voice, as Brandon put it, it is very similar to like Jedi mind tricks, I guess, where essentially you can use this voice as a commanding, like you can basically tell people what to do by using the voice. And this is a quick side note. This is about the sound design again. Whenever the voice was used, fucking brilliant. Literally, you'd feel it, like especially in an IMAX theater with the sound system. Like you feel when the voice is like, it's just so, it's very, the way they play is like, it's very loud, it's very like unsettling, and it's just like you immediately just like feel this voice, just like you get it, like he puts you in that space.
I didn't feel anything when the voice came.
That I find that shocking. But anyway, so essentially Paul is trying to use the voice and he's failing miserably. He can't do it. Then as the story progresses, he brings up to Duke Leto in one scene that like what if he isn't like the next of kin for the House Atreides? And Oscar Isaac, Leto, just basically says like, no matter what, you'll always be what I need you to be, which is my son. And so you see that he already has these doubts about who he's going to become. Also on top of that, I think what's really interesting about his character is that essentially he doesn't really know who he is. He doesn't know like he doesn't have a specific personhood, I guess you could say, but like people are putting their expectations on him. He is expected to be this Bene Gesserit like fucking messiah. He's expected to be the next of kin for House Atreides. He's expected to be this, that, and the other. And what I think is interesting is that it's a very interesting subversion of that, considering that this is a chosen one narrative. It's a very interesting subversion to have him be someone who doesn't even want any of that and just wants to be Paul. And I think that's very interesting. And like as his character progresses throughout the film, he also has the visions, which there are a few different things that can go into what the visions are. Part of it, I think, is the Bene Gesserit situation, but the other part of it is I think that the spice, which we mentioned, acts as like a hallucinogenic for a lot of people, or for most people, is kind of heightening those visions. And as he has these visions throughout the film, they get more and more specific and more like things start to come true from his visions. So, for example, throughout the film, so Zendaya isn't really in this film. She's really only in the film for like maybe like 15 minutes, like you said.
7. I think that's her total screen time, actually.
Well, yes, but she is a very, very prominent presence in his visions. And anytime he has a vision of Zendaya, Shani is her name, or Chani, he is presented with with a vision of a war, and specifically, it's described in the book as a holy war, but in the film, in the context of the film, it's just shown as kind of like a war where he is becoming essentially not only a ruler over the entirety of this imperium, but also a messiah to all these people. They constantly use words like the what was the word again? It was like El Gaib, something like that. There's a lot of different terms that are used in this movie, and honestly, Bene Gesserit was the only one that stuck for me. But regardless, they use a bunch of terms to describe him as being the next Messiah, as being the one who is of the prophecy. And his visions are really pushing him towards that, I guess, destiny. And so when you say like, oh, well, why is he so adamant on staying on Arrakis? That's why. The visions are telling him, this is where my journey is going to lead me, and this is the way I'm going to go. This is the path I'm going to take. Despite the fact that he doesn't want it, it's as if seeing Chani, specifically at the end of the film, reinforced, maybe this is my path. This is who I'm supposed to be. And this is what I'm going to be. As opposed to doing what his mother tells him, Lady Jessica, which is, we need to go back to Caladan. He's like, no, I'm going to do what my visions are telling me to do. And this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So when you say why this stuff is happening, that is why. I really didn't understand that question.
Well, no, it's more so like from the get-go. It's more so why did he want to go on the planet? That was what I was originally posing.
Well, he didn't.
Yeah, he did. He went straight up to his dad and he's like, I want to go with Duncan.
He wants to go with Duncan. Well, wait, sorry, I might be getting something mixed up, because I am thinking of the part where he goes, as everyone's leaving Caladan and is heading for Arrakis. He goes and I thought this was a really interesting like little thing. He goes over and touches the water on their planet, and then like walks around for a bit, and then they head off to Arrakis. And that was kind of showing like this is the last time he's basically going to see water in abundance like this, because they're going to be on Arrakis for however long, probably years. So yeah, maybe I'm getting it mixed up. But I thought that he didn't want to go, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's something I have to rewatch, because I'm probably forgetting.
There's definitely, I remember this. He was just like, I want to go with you. And then Duncan's just like, nah, can't.
Okay. All right.
It was like during the like landing bay.
Oh, yeah. Okay, now I remember, because he has the vision of Duncan with the Freeman. Right. That it was that part. When they're talking in the hangar. Yeah,
they were talking in the hangar.
Yeah, and then he was saying that like he's been having dreams and like all this other stuff, and then he mentions that he had seen a vision of Duncan with the Freeman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I got you. Well, I just took it as like his character throughout. So even if he does want to go, I basically just took it as like, because he's been having the visions since the jump of the film, and so the visions are basically pointing him towards the direction of going to Arrakis and finding his destiny, essentially. Which is kind of what's driving his character. And I think that with that, where his arc comes into play is the fact that, again, he has all these expectations put upon him by his dad and his mother, two different expectations, but expectations nonetheless. And he's saying, no, fuck that. I'm going to go along with my destiny on Arrakis. I'm going to be one with the Freeman. I'm going to follow essentially Chani into this world of opportunity that apparently awaits me.
Yeah, even motivate, but even like with that reasoning, I didn't get any sense of motivation or urgency behind it, other than like, I guess his personhood or his individuality, you could say, like as to like what his journey is setting him out on. But like again, maybe it's just, again, I'm not getting that emotional connection, or I'm not getting that like that feeling that I should care. He's on this journey, and it didn't really feel like a journey, to be honest, either. It just felt like things are happening, and like, yes, there's a lot of movies. This movie, or I shouldn't say this movie, but the source material that it's referencing from, Dune, was the inspiration for all of these chosen one narratives, like Star Wars with Luke Skywalker and Anakin Skywalker, and so many other like stories and movies to follow. Like, this is the beginning point, essentially, or at least the most popular one that you could say inspired so many others. And I understand there's a lot of chosen one narratives, but for this one in particularly, it just didn't feel like I should care about him, or I didn't feel like I should be as involved in his story. And I think where they try to make him a blank slate, they made him feel like a brick wall, where there's just no emotional feeling behind it, and like there wasn't much on his part to feel like I should be relating to him, or I could see myself in him, or I could at least relate to him in any way. It just more felt like he had to go on a journey because Visions kind of went in that direction. And like, yeah, there's that backing to it where it's, oh, well, I don't really know where I belong. It's like, you forget about that as soon as you get on Arrakis, like, because once Leto dies, and like once everyone else dies that around him that is kind of important to him, you kind of forget about them as much as they are quote unquote important. And even then, with like, I think I brought this up before in the non-spoiler section, where it's like they try to highlight characters, it kind of fall on a flat note for me. Like Journey's, like I didn't even remember if he died or when he died. I don't think I saw his on-screen death, but even then I kind of just forgot about.
Sorry, you said Gurney, right?
Gurney, yeah. He just kind of evaporates in the narrative, and I care about him. And then
according to a lot of podcasts, I said, and spoiler alert, if you don't see them die, they're not dead.
I mean, I figured as much, that he's just going to come back somehow. But and even with Duncan, Idaho, with the only character that was likable, at least in my opinion, and I say that kind of loosely because, again, even his character is just like, I was just more so rooting for him more than anything. It's not so like that I connected with him, but still, during his very last battle scene, it was just where he evaporated into the story, and we moved on. Yep, he died. Goodbye. He served his purpose. Like, they try to highlight him as like, oh yes, he's the best warrior, that he'll do anything, even as he has a sword stabbed through his abdomen, pulls it out, and continues to fighting their Harkonnen. Like, yeah, they're trying to portray he's a badass, and like, yeah, cool, but again, I don't care.
I still think I did care, because I think that what specifically, so the scene where Duncan Idaho dies, I think is interesting, because I think that what I found really interesting about the scene is that, like, well, not specifically that scene, but just Duncan Idaho's character as a whole, is that I think that his character really acted as kind of like a bridge between the House Atreides and the Fremen, because he spent months with the Fremen when they meet Stilgar. Like, they meet Stilgar, and Stilgar is like friendly to Duncan, but then to House Atreides, he's like, fuck you, just get off our planet. And like, I think that that's kind of where his importance is. He is kind of acting as this liaison between the Fremen and House Atreides. And so not only is his death resonant because, in a sense, that bridge is gone, but two, I think that what makes that character interesting is his connection to Paul. You see the way that Paul interacts with Duncan versus Gurney versus Lady Jessica versus Leto. He has a very different demeanor when it comes to Duncan. And I found that really, really interesting, because it shows that Duncan, in a sense, is his best friend, essentially. And so in that moment, in the inciting incident, because it's ultimately, this whole film is just the inciting incident of what Dune is. Like, it resonated with me, because it was like, okay, your best friend is now sacrificing himself so that way you can get away, you know?
I mean, I hear that. I just never saw that, and I never felt that. I don't know. There's just major disconnects in this movie that I just don't relate to. And I never wasn't invested in, and I never was drawn into. And I think that's kind of just where I'm at with this movie, is that I really want to like it. The more I try to find reasons to like it, like it's more like, why don't I like it? And I wait good. Like, it's not like I'm trying to hate this movie, and it's not like it's just like I genuinely have problems with it. and I generally just don't see what the appeal is that you see in it, or what everyone else technically sees, like both reviews and friends that saw the movie with.
Well, I'm trying to think of what the other points you made were prior to, because I kind of wanted, because there was one in particular that I wanted to unpack, and I'm trying to remember which one it was.
There's powers. Why should I care? Why did he want to go to the planet? Touched on that. It's not friendly to people who were not already like Dune people, I guess you could say. People who knew about Dune. And then I had Paul's whiny no changes, and then too many visions need to cut out from the film.
Okay, so I covered most of those. I think the other part was the powers. I was going to say, I find it interesting that was a hang-up for you, because for me, I was just kind of like, okay, we're in a galaxy far, far away with a bunch of people going to a fucking planet full of giant sandworms. I think I can suspend my disbelief.
So it's not so much that, it's just more so just like, it's just more so I think I was just trying to bring up a point that this movie just has a lot of things that are presented that just go unexplained. And yes, I can just take that at face value, and sure, it's fine. But like, again, maybe it's just my understanding of how this movie was like turned at me. I kind of took it as either like a Star Trek or just like another like sci-fi movie where it's like we're on a different planet kind of thing. And it's not because there's powers that I don't like it, or just that it wasn't explained that I don't like it. It's more so like it's presenting things that I felt like should have been explained, or is like, is there a part of this world that I don't know about? I feel like I'm missing parts of this world. Like there's just like, again, I know there's so much from the original book and from other sources, like the sci-fi miniseries, the other movie by David Lynch. Like there's other things that, I mean, obviously it all comes from the original book, but still, like I just felt like there should have, not that there should have been, at least there should have been some type of inkling as to what certain things happened, or how certain things led to one another. Almost like, again, it's like the overall arching problem for me is that there's just so much left like almost untouched, or almost like, I don't know how to put it other than, just untouched, or just like not easily digestible. And maybe that's my problem. Maybe I'm just dumb. Maybe I just need things to be easily digestible. Maybe that's my problem.
Maybe. No, I'm just kidding.
Wow.
I'm kidding. No.
I'm going home.
Well, see, I think that like so I think that once again, like maybe this movie wouldn't work for me if it was presented like a Star Wars, because I did you were actually showing me and a few other people like these comments from people who didn't like the movie before, and I found them interesting, to say the least, because I think that one comment to me suggested the person really wanted a Star Wars movie.
No, they wanted the opposite. They said that Dune was trying to be a Star Wars but failed.
But what I'm saying is that this isn't a Star Wars movie. is my
and I know, but that's what they're saying though, is that like it wanted to be a Star Wars because, you know, Warner Brothers like says the next big epic, the next big saga or franchise, like for movies, like that's what it was trying to be. Well, and they're saying it didn't work out that way.
Well, no, because I think that is completely incorrect to the making of this film, for a few reasons. One, if this was Warner Brothers going, this is going to be the next big epic, they would have greenlit part 2.
They did.
No, they did it just recently. They would have greenlit it back when they greenlit part 1. They would have been like Disney and been like, we're making a whole new trilogy. They didn't do that. And 2,
but Disney has Disney money. They can just do that.
Yeah, and Warner Brothers has Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers is not poor. This is not broke. Excuse me?
I mean, you don't have Disney money, though.
They still have Harry Potter money.
Yo,
and it's been 10 years.
Harry Potter needs to chill.
Oh my god. Well, either way, so yeah, the fact that they would have greenlit something earlier, like to add to the world of Dune, but they didn't do that. They were just basically looking at this as like, okay, this is a one and done thing. We'll see how it performs, and then we'll decide what we're gonna do next. Which one is smarter overall, but two,
it'd be smarter
which
if they
goes back
didn't
to my
label
point
it
of
part
like
one.
this isn't. But this goes back to my point of like this is not an epic made for studio greed. This is an epic made by a filmmaker, made by someone who had a clear vision, and that to me goes a long way. Because if this was presented like a Star Wars, if this was trying to be a Star Wars, which I would argue it is not by any means, if it was trying to be a Star Wars, then the movie would be a piece of shit and nearly unwatchable. And I think that this. I don't think that that's the case with this film. I think that this film's trying to be its own thing. It's trying to do something different with a source material that ultimately inspired so many other pieces of work. And I think that it says a lot that people are responding so positively to a film that could easily be described as derivative by some people, a la that comment.
I mean, his vision was as clear as Stevie Wonder's.
That's fucked up. That was fucked up. What the? That was fucked up. How dare you? That was fucked up. Oh my god.
To who? Stevie or to Denis?
Both. Oh my god. So like I guess I have to ask like so did you not so I guess what were your feelings during the coup, I guess? Because that's the inciting incident for the story. When House Harkonnen finally basically goes about their attack on House Atreides. On Arrakis.
It's a coup. That's what I felt. Just felt like I'm just seeing what it is. I didn't. Again, I'm not.
There was nothing you took away from it.
I felt nothing there. There was nothing from this that I was like, "Oh no, what are we going to do now?" Like I just like it just felt like any other like. Again, maybe it's because I've also watched a lot of fantasy stuff. I've also watched a lot of other like medias in which there's been coups or uprising against a certain group of people or a certain house or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And it just felt like, okay, this is the next logical step this to do. Like, yep, there's going to be this moment of Paul's life where he goes out with one other person who survives, this being his mother, Jessica, that bitch. And they just have to make it on their own until X, Y, or Z happens, that being the Freeman, and then they, surviving. I don't know. It just felt like that everything felt like it fell into place, but in the sense that it followed a sequence that I knew was going to happen. The movie felt predictable in that sense, and there was no, I didn't care. Like, Oscar Isaac dying, his character Leto, I was like, okay, yep, kind of had to happen. He's, yeah, just felt nothing. There's it was like, yep.
So, okay, so you felt nothing from the coup, nothing from like the sandworm sequences.
That too, like, I thought I would have cared because I'm into like monster stuff and like to like things of I would say like animal like related things or just like beasts that are of things you should be worried of. Or, yeah, things of that nature. Yeah, I didn't get anything from worms either.
See,
I think it would have been cooler. I don't know if that's the word, or more interesting, more would have piqued my interest more. I don't know what they could have done actually. I don't know what they could have done with the worms. That would have been like more interesting, but they didn't feel real threat. I get like. Because, like, I understand why they're threatening. Like, there's that one sequence, like, in the beginning of the film where it's, like, literally there's this giant worm that eats an entire, like, station. I guess that's what you can call it. I don't really know what it was. But
it's essentially like a mining rover.
Yeah, so it ate the whole mining rig. And they all had to escape and be like, oh, no, the worm. And it's like, oh, so yeah, the scale, it's there. And, like, the threat is real. You can't really walk around. Oh, that's another thing. All the stupid movements they did to like get around on.
Okay, all right.
Arrakis be like, okay, in order to not get detected by the worm, you gotta be a worm. And then they start like freaking ice skiing on the sand with their freaking shins.
Okay, yeah. It's not being a worm; it's being the sand.
Yeah, whatever.
And yes, I agree that those movies are kind of dumb, but honestly, within this world and considering like what was going on, I was perfectly fine with it. Like I just let that go.
Yeah, I
But
mean, I let go too, but it's just like when I was already in the zone of not being in the moment, I nitpicked every single thing that I didn't like.
oh my god, see, I just find it really fascinating that you got nothing out of this movie. I
Nothing
think
was new, and I'm not asking for movies to be new. Believe me, like 90% of Hollywood movies are all recycled movies to some degree. Like I understand that. Like I'm not asking for new, but there was nothing there that presented as itself as being this grand epic new thing that everyone's being like, it's never been done before. It's just like these are like the same graphics, these are the same special effects that I've seen in
oh I
a few other movies.
disagree.
Like, yes,
Oh I
it's cool,
disagree.
but what's new? They don't seem any more lifelike to me. This doesn't seem like
I
a more believable planet that we're on. Like
so
it feels the same.
so when you talk about the technical presentation, I wholeheartedly disagree on almost every level. And I find it fascinating that like because even if you don't like the movie, I struggle to understand how you look at a movie of this scale and just say like it's fine. Like as far as the technical presentation, not the story, just the technical presentation. I find it very very I guess difficult for me to wrap my head around the idea of just saying it's fine.
Well, I have to ask you the same question back. What do you see about it that's of a spectacle? What's so
Well,
spectacular about it?
Well, I think that, and keeping in mind that as far as like big budget blockbuster spectacles like this, um, again, all of them kind of have a samey look to them. So, like, I think specifically Marvel is the best example of this because they're kind of the biggest of like the big budget spectacle films, I guess you could say. And that's not to say that there isn't any merit in Marvel movies, but for me, they're just kind of again they feel the same a lot of the time. And I think a big reason for that is because like the fact that Dune and so comparing Dune to let's say Avengers Endgame, because they both have a very similar budget. I believe Dune is a little bit cheaper by maybe about like a couple like maybe like 50 million, but they're about the same budget wise. Avengers Endgame to me has this glossy, very like bright like fakeness to it. Like the visuals feel fake and they don't pop, they don't come to life. And there are some special effects here and there in Marvel movies that like do like pop. And there are definitely like images from Marvel movies that I would say like, "Ooh, that was beautiful and that was pretty." But like for the most part, every time I see a Marvel movie, they always have like this glossy sheen of just fake. And in the case of Dune, it felt natural to the point in which a lot of the visual effects, not all, but most of the visual effects to me looked so real. Like I hope I'm pronouncing this right. The or the ornithopters, the ornithopters looked I think amazing. Like they had a weight to them that felt real. There was a scene towards the beginning of the movie when the Imperium first comes to Caladan to meet with Duke Leto and the rest of House Atreides, and they're in this giant like white orb of a ship that was very Arrival-esque in the sense that the visual is just the ship is gigantic and it's so big that it feels like it's not even supposed to be airborne, but it doesn't feel fake. It feels like it has a weight to it, and it feels just so grand almost every level. And then on top of that, I think that what helps the visual so much is also the sound design and the score. And I think that Hans Zimmer, I think this is the best score he's done in at least 10 years. Some would say probably since Interstellar. I would argue since Inception. I found his score to be so well done. From the minute the movie starts to the minute the movie ends, like it just felt so epic just in its visual presentation. Um, and I don't think many big budget films do that anymore. I think that even Christopher Nolan, like I really like Tenet a lot, but the thing about Tenet is that like the epic scale of Tenet is basically very grounded because it's essentially just a bunch of people running around with guns, but sometimes they're running backwards. And then like going back to Interstellar, Interstellar is probably the closest thing to this for me, where it's like there is an epic scale and a weight to everything that's being placed on screen that adds to the experience of watching it. And it doesn't have that sheen of just fake. It's not there. It actually looks like real in a way that was effective, in my opinion. And so like because I remember you said that the movie, you mentioned at one point the movie did the bare minimum, and I legit was like, the bare minimum?
Yeah, I said what
this is the bare minimum? Like this is above and beyond. The bare minimum is fucking Black Widow.
No, this is a bare minimum in the sense that it's a movie. What's a movie? I guess it has characters and a plot, and there's visuals and music. That's the bare minimum. Did I say it was good?
But that's what I'm saying. Like that to me is not the bare minimum, because even if it was a film I didn't like what's an example of a big budget movie I don't like?
I don't know.
Oh, I thought you'd be able to answer that question, because I feel like I talk about a bunch of like.
Oh, big budget I know what it is. The Favorite.
Okay, so audiences, if you don't know, Brandon hates The Favorite.
I do. That movie I will actively always hate. I rewatched it.
Maybe at some point we might do an episode on it, because honestly I have thoughts, but we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah, we should just say movies we hate.
Honestly, at some point. I'd be down for that. Like, we'll make that a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just very strange to me that you would say it's the bare minimum, because I think the bare minimum
isn't that the bare minimum, though? To make a movie, you need a camera crew, an actor, and some music, and there you go. You filmed the movie. Like that's
but making
the bare minimum.
But making a whole experience is not the bare minimum. Like, as much as I agree that Avatar is basically a pointless, stupid ass film with like the plot isn't good. Nothing about that movie is really like good necessarily. But like the amount of effort that went into the visual effects and the presentation, that's not the bare minimum to me. The bare minimum is whack-ass cinematography with whack-ass sound design and whack-ass actors doing whack-ass things with a whack-ass script. Nothing about this movie is whack.
Sir. The plot
Nothing about this movie is whack. Even if, okay, so I'll concede. Let's say I were to agree that the script is whack. I don't. But let's say I agree that the script is bad. The visual presentation alone makes it not the bare minimum.
Okay, so you basically saying that you did your homework and that you tried. I feel like it's the bare minimum.
but I think that we're prioritizing two separate things here, though, because it sounds like you're prioritizing like the plot. You're prioritizing the story. Well, because you're saying the bare minimum is still this visual presentation.
What are you watching for then if it's not for the story? I'm not just watching it to see pictures move on a screen.
I think I can agree that a movie that is strictly visual with no story is bad. There are some that I really don't like, The Green Knight being one of them. I know that's a hot take, but I really did not like The Green Knight. But even with that being said, even if this script was bad, which I don't think it's a bad script, I think it's I don't even want to say it's bare, because it's so dense. Like the script, even if you were to say the script is not really the strongest element of this film,
it's not.
The whole, for me, is what's important. Like, even if the script isn't that great, can I appreciate other things about the film? And in this case, yes, 100% I can. Because, like, even when I watch something like Titanic, I am not the biggest fan of Titanic. I don't think it's a bad movie, but, like, I do definitely think that movie, script-wise, is ridiculous. I'm rich, so I'm gonna kill myself. Oh my god, I'm falling in love with this guy named Jack who I met, like, 2 days ago? Oh, no. He's dead.
Spoilers, I haven't seen that movie.
Boo-hoo. Oh my god, it's been 20 years. 30. No, yeah, it's been 20 years.
Sorry, that matters to me.
25 years almost. But yeah. I think that in the case of like Dune, I don't think this is the bare minimum by any means. And like, I didn't even finish my Titanic analogy. I'm sorry, I'm still all over the place.
No, you're done with that.
With Titanic, I can still appreciate like the set design, the costumes, the acting. Like I can still appreciate a lot of other things that are going on in the film. But in the case of Dune, like, even if I was to say the script is bad, which I don't think it's bad by any means, I think it's a pretty good script considering, the presentation around it didn't need to go this hard. And they went that hard, and I appreciate that 100%.
So I guess it kind of goes, again, boils down for me is that yes, it has all those things, but I guess subjectively for me, it didn't do anything that I liked. I wouldn't say I didn't like, but it's just like I didn't care for. Like you're saying how there's weight and there's realism, or there's a certain realistic quality to the CGI, or like just the spectacles of that. I've been saying spectacles a lot, but anyway, basically the weight behind the imagery that we've been seeing. I didn't feel that. I didn't get that. I never felt like it was something I was like, wow, this is taking me away. This is what cinema should be going for. This is what every movie should be striving for going forward, making the movies look and feel as believable as possible. And never felt like it was any more believable than like Avengers Endgame was your comparison. It didn't feel any more real. It didn't feel any more fake. It just was what it was. And maybe this is coming from someone who has a video game background where like I play video games. Well, yeah, no doubt. But I play like a lot of video games, whether it be AAA titles from like big studios such as Naughty Dog, who made the Uncharted series, which shout out to Tom Holland being in Uncharted. Please get recasted. Anywho, where those games, yes, they strive for realism. And you feel the weight, because I mean, maybe for me, it's because like it feels more tactile because I'm playing those games, like The Last of Us, Uncharted, even like games such as like probably like Fallout New Vegas or things like that. There's weight behind it for the time being. So like Fallout Vegas is an older game, but during that time, it felt very real. It felt very like lifelike. But then as you get into these newer like generation games, the graphics improved so much that I'm just like, wow, this is almost realistic. Like I might like if I catch it at a quick glance, I might think that's a real person. Like, and so maybe that's where my bar is at, where it's like I was literally in the world of that medium, and now I'm comparing it to a movie where it's like I kind of divorced myself, where I know that I'm a spectator now, and I know I'm watching something as opposed to feeling like I'm actually fully invested in it. So for me, there's just not that gravitas that comes with this, the imagery that's being presented in Dune. And the music, yes, I agree with you. And again, so everything that you said, like the movie being appreciated as a whole, I think I can appreciate it as a whole. I'm like biting my tongue a little bit as I say that, where it's like I appreciate the music. I do appreciate the graphics. Like it didn't look like a bad movie. By no means am I saying that Dune looks bad. Like it is good.
Like, do you want it to look like The Incredible Bulk?
No, I don't want it to look like that, and I'm not saying it looks like that. I'm just saying for me, it didn't change anything, and it doesn't feel new, and it doesn't feel like it'll be revolutionary for movies going forward. Like for you, you're basically making it sound like this is the level that movies should be on now, or maybe not should be, but like what we can be. I guess is more so what.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
yeah, that's where I am on it. Like I think that like I do think that Denis did something really I keep on saying he did something really interesting here, but I think he did. Like I really think that this is an achievement in filmmaking. And I think that he's been doing achievements in filmmaking since basically maybe Sicario. I like Sicario a lot, but really it doesn't start until Arrival. Like the triple threat of Arrival, Blade Runner, and then this, I think is what like really. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think, but even then, I think Arrival does so much better. And yes, I think we can both agree that I think Arrival is the better movie compared to Dune. But like obviously, the graphics in Arrival aren't any better. They're probably technically worse than Dune because it doesn't have as big as a budget. But I felt the weight that you're talking about there, Daryl, with the septipods, as I did with like it felt. Like that impact that you're saying, like when we saw the movie in theaters, like in that giant ship arrives, that's the feeling. The thing that you felt is what I felt when we watched Arrival, and obviously it doesn't have as good as designer graphics as Dune. So, yeah.
Well, I think that in the case of Arrival, I think what makes that movie work so well is that because I would agree that I think the visual effects on the actual spaceship is really good. The heptapods are solid. Like, they're not bad. They're solid, like, as far as CGI goes. I think that where the CGI really starts to show like its seams is the scene where Amy Adams goes into the room with the heptapods. Not the big room with the glass. The like she actually goes into the thing with Costello.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and like you see her hair, and it's like, it just doesn't really look great. But
yeah, but that doesn't take
I think
me
the thing
out of
is that, like,
though.
I do think Arrival is the better film because it has an emotional gut punch to it that this film just doesn't have. Part of it is, again, because it's a part one, but the other part of it is just that, like, this movie, I would argue, is a lot more, like, cold than Arrival is. There is a warmth that specifically comes from Amy Adams' performance that I think is, and because she's like the central character, that really comes through. In the case of Dune, like, the warmest character, like I said before, is probably Lady Jessica, but she's not the lead. And so, like, I think that in some ways could maybe hurt the film a little bit, but I still connected to it, and I was still interested in what was going on enough to want to see what happens next. Because, like, I will agree that, like, emotionally, that isn't the most fulfilling film out there. It just isn't. But I think that, like, everything else in tandem with the story and the way that the characters are going had me invested.
Yeah. I think we've come to the point where it's just like
we're kind of repeating ourselves.
Yeah, and it's just a subjective matter at this point. I will rewatch the movie. I'll give it because I want to like it. I'll give it another shot. Obviously, I'm not going to watch it in IMAX again. I'm not going to spend the money on that.
I might.
I know you will. I won't. I'll probably get like a HBO Max like trial. I'll get my surround sound downstairs going. I'll be in bootleg IMAX in my basement.
And then just watch you like the movie more.
Yeah, I'm just like, wow.
You actually like the movie?
I'm just by myself. You know what the problem was? It's just all these damn people in the theater.
Oh my god.
They're just crowding my space.
And then we upload a new episode, and it's just you going, so everyone, I take back what I said before. Dune is a masterpiece.
Yes, it's now a 6 out of 10
That'd be really
instead
funny.
of a 5 out of 10.
That'd be really funny. Wait, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
It just moves up 1 point. It's a 6 out of 10 now.
I hate it. I hate it. Well, yeah, like I said before, this is an 8 out of 10 for me. Loved it.
I'll keep it at a 5. Yeah.
Oh, also, we didn't even mention we didn't really even go into the Gom Jabbar scene, which, I mean, we could just say real quick, loved it.
Forgettable.
Why was that forgettable to you?
Because I actually forget it.
Oh my god! It's the scene with the pain box and the poison.
Oh yeah, it's so forgettable. Even if I'm remembering.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Just more Timothy crying and shrieking, blah blah blah.
Well, I thought he was fantastic in that scene. He's so good.
That's like the only time he actually emotes. Besides his other time where he just yells at his mom, where he's like, "Get off me!"
Well, I was about to say, you just completely disregard the tent scene.
Yeah, I kind of do. He's just kind of hallucinating the whole time, and then gets out of the. Yeah. Anywho, movie 5 out of 10. Go watch it if you want. I'm not going to tell you not to. I hope you enjoy it. I did not.
Fine.
And with that, thank you for listening to the Brandon and Daryl experience.
Oh my god! I was not ready. I was not ready.
If you enjoyed it, remember to give us a follow on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all those things. Same it's at the BD Pod or the Brandon and Daryl Experience on Facebook. You can like and subscribe on our YouTube channel and give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. With that, I'm Brandon.
And I'm Daryl.
And we will talk to you guys later.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Go watch the movie. Zendaya, don't hate me. Itay, don't hate me.
I hope they both hate you.
Oh god. We meet them later on somehow. Be like, I heard your podcast.
Oh my
Be
god.
Like, oh no.
Oh no, not Zendaya listening to our podcast.